someone who is very well known to the American Baha'i community and who has been involved in really a lifetime experience of working and functioning in the business environment, which is really a major, when you think about it, a major form of development. Faahang Javid came to the United States in 1944 with 9 Persian Baha'i students. He worked hard and received his Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Illinois. His entire life has been involved in development of pulp and paper machine industry, really the entire industry. From 1970 until 1980, he was the chief operating officer of a New York City company that had 14 manufacturing plants around the world, mostly in Western Europe and Canada. In 1980, he joined a pulp and paper manufacturing, machinery manufacturing company in Wisconsin. And from there, he, in 1984, purchased his own company in Everett, Washington, entitled Acrowood Corporation, which is a manufacturer of pulp and paperwork machinery. This company employs over 100 individuals and was established in 1892. His 2 sons are also involved in working in the business. And he is also involved, some of you may know, and has much experience in Baha'i administration. He is the chairman of the New Era Foundation, involved in international development. Before that, he served for many years on the International Goals Committee, a committee of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. In 1957, for one interim period, it should also be mentioned, Mr. Javid pioneered with his family to France. He was a member, at that time, elected member of the First National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of France. And at that time, he served as its treasurer. We are absolutely delighted to have Mr. Javid, and we're very happy to have him and his family here. And at this time, please join me in welcoming Mr. Javid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think if you all permit me that we take 5 minutes and stand up. And we'll get back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I assume everybody is happy now. It was a great source of happiness to you. Take 5 minutes off. Okay. You know, it's a great privilege to be here and talk to such a distinguished audience. I've always had a great admiration for legal profession, and I think I should have been a lawyer and a businessman, because really all your dealings are in legal aspects, and when an attorney is on your side, it's a great joy. I always heard a story about a man that killed his father and mother, and the attorney was trying to protect him. And when he got to court, he said to the judge, "Judge, you should have a mercy on defendant, have a mercy for my client." And the judge, really looked at him. He agreed that he killed his father and mother, And he said, "Why should I have mercy on him?" He said, "Your Honor, he is an orphan." We live in the state of Washington, and we've been there 4 years. It's such a wonderful state, And I believe some of our California friends are jealous, because one of my friends, Los Angeles, he says, "Why did you move to the state of Washington?" I said, "Why not?" He says, "How do you like to live all year round in a car wash?" I must tell you, it doesn't rain in Washington. It drizzles. As a matter of fact, if you live in Washington and work there, you don't carry a raincoat, But the only thing that happens to you is that every year you have to buy a new suit, because that old suit, it shrinks, Pretty soon you can't put your buttons together. But my wife tells me that's not the reason you buy new suits. The subject today is Baha'i values in today's business environment. And the reason I really chose that subject, because many times my friends ask me, how can you become Baha'i and be successful in your trade and profession with a very high Baha'i ethics? So I really chose this subject, and we're going to talk about it. Let us examine what the Baha'i concept for the future is, or how does a businessman sees tomorrow's rather than today's business environment. We are talking about having one world, a global economy, one common currency, no trade barriers, auxiliary universal language, equal opportunity for all, elimination of extreme poverty and wealth. If you own a factory, you will have no strike, because the Baha'i writing talks that the workers must have sufficient wages and have profit sharing. And if you have a profit sharing, that they benefit by the progress of your business, then they will not go on strike. Obligation of parents or society to educate all children. Everyone to be engaged in some type of trade or profession in order to serve humanity. When I normally prepare for my talk or do my work, my secretary do a lot of work. She does all the typing, and I purposely let her do that, because that way she can read Baha'i writings. And then when I read some of the passages from Baha'i writings, and when you're about to become a Baha'i or Baha'i, you're so blind in the wonderful Baha'i teachings, and you always wonder how other people look at it. Because how can anybody read Baha'u'llah's writing and do not recognize the manifestation of God? So I asked her, after she did all that work, I said, her name is Jean. I said, Jean, what do you think? She says, they're really wonderful, but. I said, what do you mean, but? She said, but idealistic. When she said that to me, it hurt my feeling. But the more I thought of it, I think she's very right. See, the Baha'i teachings is really, when you talk about social order of Baha'u'llah, is for the future, you see. And we do not recognize that. And many times, when the people read about the Baha'i writings, I'm sure the also is wonderful. But they say it will never happen. See, it will never happen. Is they look at the world around them and what's happening, and many areas, it's getting worse. When we think of the extreme poverty and wealth, I think we see the past, I would say, perhaps more past 10 years than the 10 years before. There's a greater extreme. I think the wealthier are getting wealthier and poor are getting poorer. And especially in the Latin countries, you find out there's extreme wealth is being built up and extreme poverty. So you see the old order is falling apart. And this is what really people see. If you think of the past prophets of God, at the time that they came and brought the messages, and today we so well accept them, they were very idealistic at the time. The 10 commandments of God, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. At the time he came, you really think about it, It's very idealistic. I mean, if something did something to you, you go back and shoot them or kill them. It's a very normal part of life. In our today's society, you do not have to come from a Christian background or Jewish background. All around the world, the judge says, "Thou shalt not kill." It's a law, One Baha'u'llah 100 years ago, the Professor E.G. Brown said, "This earth is but one country and mankind its citizen." You have to think about that. It's only 100 years ago. It took about 30 to 40 days to go from Tehran to Accra by mule, camel, and walk. There was no one world. There was no transportation. It's really very idealistic thought. At this time, 100 years gone by, I think the day approaching that all the people of the world will say, this earth is but one country and mankind is citizen. It's coming. One of the persons I admire as a businessman is Dr. Armand Hammer. He's the chairman of the board of Occidental Petroleum. He's a great philanthropist. He put a lot of money in the field of cancer. And he's 80 years old, in his 80s. And he says, before I die, I would like to see two things happening. He says, one, there will be complete cure for cancer. And the other one to be a world peace. I believe he will see world peace before he sees all cure for cancer. I hope it is long enough to see that. One of the part of the, in today's environment as a Baha'i, you practice whatever you feel is applicable in today's environment. The ethical part of the Baha'i faith, you must practice. The social part, you do whatever you can. In past 20 years, I have been in a management position, and one of way of conduct my business is consultations. We have what we call a staff meeting every Monday, normally Monday noon. We have all the staff members, and we consult about the affair of the company in each areas and make a decision. And as chairman mentioned, I have my two sons work in the company, and I must tell him that he's here, that one, we have this discussion and the agreement is made. He's the one who challenged the agreement. He talks differently than total group. So finally I call him outside. I said, why are you doing that? He says, Dad, you're not having Baha'i consultations. I said, it's quite surprised, because I thought I was doing it. He said, you see, if you watch the people in a group, they look at you and listen to you and see in what way you're leaning, and they agree with you. And when they agree with you, you think you're having consultations. You're not having consultations. And so really, a true Baha'i consultation to the non-Baha'i community is not doable. I think he's so right. It's because one of the principles of consultation is that all the members of the group must be in the same rank. If you're a member of assembly, you're all the same. The chairman does not have any higher position than other members of the assembly. They're all the same. They're all entering the room with the same spirit. They bring the same discussion. And in a non-Baha'i organization, when somebody is a manager and others work for him, it doesn't relate. You see? Perhaps what I should do, I should stay out of these meetings and let them consult among each other. But does consultation work? Yes, it works a great deal because you ask for their opinion, you value them, and because of the comments was made to me, I'm more careful not to say anything, trying to just bring the problem but don't tell them which way I favor. So hopefully truth comes out, So if you permit me, I will call this type of consultation a lesser consultation, and the Baha'i consider the most great consultations. In the Japanese, the Japanese have done a tremendous job in the business world, And one of the things that the American business is learning and trying to apply is called quality circle of Japanese. And what the quality circle is, really you have to define what it is. The quality circle is that people that work together, let's say around a machine tool, that are very familiar with how the machine operates, they get together, sit around each other, and brainstorm how they can increase productivity. They consult in what way they can improve our quality workmanship, how we can improve. I would call that consultations. Baha'u'llah's law given for all the people of the world. It's really marvelous how it's applicable in everyday's business. Let us dwell on some of the spiritual aspects of the Baha'i faith. These are from Baha'i writings. Trustworthiness, wisdom, and honesty are, of a truth, God's beauteous adornments for His creatures. These fair garments are a befitting vesture for every temple. Happy are those that comprehend, and well is it with them that acquire such virtues. The companion of God are in this day the lamp that must leaven the people of the world. They must show forth such trustworthiness, such truthfulness and perseverance, such deeds and character that all mankind may profit by their example. Now let's talk about that a little bit. In the business world, the most important partner that you have are bankers. Without bankers, you can't do anything. And when you're dealing with a bank, it's a question of the credibility with the bank. If you tell him a lie, if you misrepresent the fact, I think you're finished. Because a banker does not like surprises. He trusts you. He really lets you borrow money based on the person who owns the company or the credibility of the company. And especially if you are a family-owned or one-owner company, they put a great trust in you as a person to lend you money. And so to be able to build a track record with the bank and work with him and borrow more money and buy other companies, you have to be truthful. You have to be honest. You have whatever you promise, you must fulfill. If for some reason the business nature comes that you cannot achieve what you promise, you must go tell your bankers and tell him. You must hear from you how the facts are changed. This is a sign of success. You have to accept Baha'u'llah's ethics in making progress in this world. We have enjoined upon all to become engaged in some trade or profession, and have accounted such occupation to be an act of worship. Before all else, however, thou should receive as a sign of God's acceptance the mantle of trustworthiness from the hands of divine favor, for trustworthiness is the chief means of attracting confirmation and prosperity. Allah says prosperity. This is also from one of the tablets of Baha'u'llah called Tajalliyat. The third Tajalli is concerning arts, crafts, and sciences. Knowledge is the wings to man's life and the ladder in his ascent. Its acquisition is incumbent upon everyone. In truth, knowledge is a veritable treasure for man and a source of glory, of bounty, of joy, of exaltation, of cheer and gladness unto him. It is enjoined upon every one of you to engage in some form of occupation, such as crafts, trades, and the like. When anyone occupies himself in a craft or trade, such occupation itself is regarded in the estimation of God as an act of worship. And this is not but a token of the infinite and all-pervasive bounty. I think our speakers talked before, education or knowledge is first essential for a man for progress. The second one I want to touch upon here is after you acquire knowledge, you have to manage your environment. I'll talk about that. We say in a physical body, whatever you eat is what you are. In your mind, whatever you feed, that's what your mind are. You have to associate with the people with high morale, high etiquettes. You have to think big. You have to talk with the people with high spiritual values. Because associating people with the negative thoughts, with a low moral standard, it will degrade you. It will lower you. And I can bring you some Baha'i writings to pinpoint this one. For instance, backbiting. Backbiting, it really lowers individual person to the level who person to badmouth someone. One of the things I really enjoyed about New York City, I lived there for 10 years. Many people do object about New York City. I love the place because it's a very exciting place for a businessman. It's one of the best newspapers that I know of, New York Times. When you are there, you know the condition of the world, you are conscious what's happening around the world, you hear the news. All the big business transactions are done in New York City. When you walk in Park Avenue 2 or 3 hours, you can see several bankers, and I just must give you an example, I live in 10 years in New York City. And, it's such an exciting place to me. Then from there, I go to a very small town in Massachusetts, very small town. And you talk mostly about farming and fishing. So I was in a dentist, and, the dentist becomes very talkative when his hand's in your mouth. So he was telling me, he said, I don't understand it. I was planting some green pepper in my backyard, about a dozen of them, and the green pepper doesn't grow. It's such an important discussion, So I couldn't talk, So as soon as he put his hairy fingers out of my mouth, I said, how far did you plant these green peppers? It's what I told. I said, I was 5 or 6 inches next to each other. So why is that? I said, with green pepper, the leaves must touch. If they don't touch, the pepper does not go. Don't pollinate by air. This is nature of. I don't know why I read that. So anyway, 4 months later, I went to see him again. Oh, I have wonderful news for you. As soon as I went home, I dug all the green peppers. I have lots of green peppers in my backyard. Anyway. I think it is said It's difficult to fly with eagles when you work with turkeys. You must think big. I still talk about the young people here who want to really achieve things, you know. There's a person called Dr. Land. And, I have to admire great businessmen, you see. You have to have an example. You have an example in the Baha'i circle, you have example in business world. Dr. Land is inventor of Polaroid camera. And if you know, Polaroid camera is really absolutely miracle invention. It's really unbelievable. You take a picture comes out, And so somebody asked me, he's 80, somebody asked him, they said, what's your secret of success? He says, you find something almost impossible to do, but do it. Almost impossible, but do it. That's where great inventions are made and great breakthroughs. Now, I promise you I'll find some Baha'i writings about the associations. That seeker should regard backbiting as grievous error and keep himself aloof from his dominion. He should not wish for others that which he doth not wish for himself, nor promise that which he doth not fulfill. With all his heart, he should avoid fellowship with evildoers. You have to remember when you're raising your children. This is one of my favorite. Some of you may have seen it. It is from the Stories of Baha'u'llah by Ali Akbar Frutan. The Blessed Beauty often remarked, there are 4 qualities which I love to see manifested in people. Do not say Baha'is, in people. Baha'u'llah's message are for the people of the world. People. First, enthusiasm and courage. Second, a face wreathed in smiles and a radiant countenance. I love that. Third, that they see all things with their own eyes and not through the eyes of others. Fourth, the ability to carry a task once begun to its end. When you read the Baha'i writings, and when you are Baha'i children, and you come from third generation Baha'is, Baha'u'llah like to see a new creation in people. A new creation. What does a new creation look like? What does a new creation looks like? You will have a new eye, a new ear, a new heart, and a new mind. What does a new eye? You have to have all kind of purchases. You have to be a lover of mankind. This is essence of the new creation. You have to consider that all people of the world are like flowers in one garden. They all have equal rights and privileges. They're all citizens of one world and will contribute to its advancement and will contribute. When a Baha'i must come to a room, people must realize a being that truly loves all the people of the world. They must see that, because the eyes of a person is, you can look at somebody and what that person is. You don't have to express with words. You have to be a new generation of man. I must tell you, since I'm talking about my own experiences, some of my visit to China, because I think some of the members of the committee asked me I should talk about China. In early 1970s, shortly after Nixon was there, the pulp and paper industry of China invited the Canadian company of our group to come to China give seminar. And at that time I was the chief operating officer of the company. So 8 of us went to Beijing, China in early 1970s, probably one of the very early people we arrived in China. And on the first meeting, there were 8 of us sitting here and about 20 students or the people that in pulp paper sitting on the other side. And I was the chairman, started the meeting. And I saw the people's face very tense, And I said, you invited our group to come and give us a 7-day seminar, and you invite the Canadian of our company to come. But I thought the best to do to bring the best talents our company have to come to Beijing, China. So I have brought in my group 3 Americans, 2 Canadians, 2 from Great Britain, and 1 from France. I found the talents that are best in our companies, regardless of the nationality, and bring in this meeting. We have come here to discuss what technology of pulp and paper. We are not involved in politics. And as a matter of fact, myself, I love all the people of the world. I just wonder how that was translated in Chinese. But I saw a smile. So this was the beginning of association with that Chinese group. I think I visited 8 or 9 times after for many years. And I must tell you another story about the Chinese visit. There was a person who spoke perfect Chinese, and the customer was their lawyer. But I don't have any lawyers there, but was a part of negotiation. And he stayed very close to me, and he would always come and talk to me. He helped me to put a tea party for them, he told me what to do and who sits where. They're very class conscious, maybe all equal. But the chairman sits one place, vice chairman sits another, I must sit this place, He did all those things for me. And so about the 4th day, he said, I see after the 2 minutes talk you gave, you're quiet, say nothing. Everybody else talks, you're sitting. You're not doing anything yet. He says, don't you want to get out and do something? He says, yes, I like to get out. I said, where'd you like to go? I said, I'd like to go to the antique stores. Take me to antique stores. So anyway, he took me all day from this antique store, and I bought quite a lot. And then I said, I'd like to do something for you, He said, what can I do for you? He said, buy me leather shoes. He says, it takes me the whole year to save money to buy leather shoes and cannot find them. So I said, what size are your shoes? So he said, let me put my foot in your shoes. So I took my shoes off and put his foot. He said, you're the same size. If I exactly one year, I'll take it. So I went to this store, and it was only accept the American dollars in the store. I had only 1 leather shoes. 1 leather shoes. Right now Beijing is very prosperous. That was many years ago. So I told him, I said, this shoe is too big. He said, buy it. I put some cuttings behind it, So I bought leather shoes for him and put in the bag. And after the place, I gave it to him, And next day, he didn't show up in the meeting. I said, I bribed the poor guy. I felt so bad, because I really liked him, he was so kind to me. I said, I bribed him, And then that night, he came to my room, knocked at my room at the hotel, walked in. From the Beijing to his house is 3 hours by bicycle. That day, he went to his house 3 hours and brought back from his house small antique cup that he had in his family for many years. He gave it to me in exchange of the leather shoes I gave him. I can never forget. I still have it in my house. I always a great love for them. We walked on the Great Wall. It was in December, very cold. They're very unusual people. We would walk on a and was very slippery. He says, "You can't have these shoes. I'll buy you some Chinese shoes." So he bought me some Chinese and walk. And he walked, and they very slippery. Walk on the slope here, and they have a rope that you can take a rope to go up. But I'm not a tall man, but for me to have to walk like this, so really it did not serve me any purpose. So he was walking behind me in case I thought he would catch me. These are the kind of people I saw in China. And the end result is that after 8 or 9, 10 years, the company in Wisconsin, we opened a manufacturing plant in Xi'an, China, and we put an American general manager there for 3 years. So it was a great success. So part of that I also must say in our story because it talks about the Baha'i ethics. In the pulp and paper profession, a cocktail party is a very important part in meeting people and making friends. And I've never had problem because as soon as I attend all of them. I always go out with a customer at night. And so the first thing you do in a cocktail party, you go in the corner, get a glass of gin in your hand, from then on you walk and talk to everybody. But I found in Russia is much more difficult because it's toasting. Toasting is very important. You see President Reagan, every time you see him on television toasting. It's part of friendship, So in Russia, what I did, as soon as they brought me a glass of vodka, I put my hand on my stomach. So they left me alone. So whatever reason it was, they accepted that. Now in China, when you go to a banquet, the fancier the banquet they have, the more courses they have, 12, 14 courses. And it's customary, at the end of each course, one of them stands up, and you, American or Chinese, and, there's a small glass there, you drink, and you toast and you drink, and it's very much customary of Chinese. So I get my glass of the orange drink and toast with them, I never drank, but toast with them, And just tell you a story about the American friend sitting next to me, and I just for curiosity, and said, how does this little glass, what's it taste like? It tastes like kerosene. It's like a kerosene, 100% kerosene. And I said, why did you have 12 of them? He said, after first you don't taste anymore. But anyway, I just tell you, this is an interesting story because I drank orange drink, horrible tasting, Kool-Aid, So this is, and then in Beijing, the last day, we signed all the agreement. The Municipal Light and Industries in charge of pulp and paper group, the vice the minister was there. We all signed paper, and it was up to Chinese to provide, the refreshment and so forth. And the vice chairman, to my surprise, stood up and he says, because in the honor of your chairman that does not drink, all of us going to toast with soft drink. Amazing. And I had 6, 7, I don't know, American friend with him, and one of them is a lawyer from University of California. They speak Chinese perfectly, was with me, and they hated me. They expected champagne, on the signing. So anyway, that's how to make friends and influence people. Well, I think on the subject of China, I must tell you, in the city of Xi'an, China, which was the capital of China for 1,000 years, where this factory was started, there is a memorial called the Great Wild Goose Pagoda. And this was built in 652 A.D. The Emperor of China sent a monk to India to bring all the literature of Buddha back with him. Buddha back with him. It took him 17 years. To go to take Sikh road to go from the Xi'an all the way to Nepal, the north of India, bring all those books back and translate it. So this memorial was built, and really it's an archive because all the volumes and literature he brought back put in this building. And the China Reach is a great civilization during Tang Dynasty and was 1,000 years after Buddha. It was Buddha is about 483 to 560 BC, and the height of Buddhist faith in China was around 650. So it's almost 1,000 years later. The China became so strong in the promoting the faith of Buddha that become its center. And so I say Chinese are very spiritual people. And they sent missionaries to Japan and Korea. So the Buddhist religion really started in India, but really blossomed in China. Part of the story is that one of the guides was taking around. It looks like all I was doing was touring the country. That's true. He was giving me a tour of Xi'an, and the mosques were opening up. He said, "I'd like to see the mosque." So she took me to the mosque. I could do some Arabic words in mosque. And she asked me, she says, "Mr. Javid, are you Muslim?" I said, "No." She asked the second question. I was not going to volunteer. And because, in China, they don't teach the faith. So I asked her, I said, "What is your religion?" I asked her. And she said, the young people in China are not supposed to have religion. But we young Chinese thirst for religion. I never forgot that. Thirst for religion. Then you have to go back to Baha'i writings. This is one of the tablets of Baha'u'llah called the Tarazat. The first Taraz and the first effulgence which have dawned from the horizon of the mother book is that man should know his own self and recognize that which leadeth unto loftiness or lowliness, glory or abasement, wealth or poverty. Isn't that beautiful? In this country, especially, we tell our children, you can be whatever you like. Whatever you want to be, you will. And I really don't believe that. I really should say, you find out what your child's talents are and what direction he's motivated. If you are very strong in mathematics, he could become an engineer. If he doesn't have a voice, please don't insist him to become opera singer. Because the sooner a child focuses what our talents and faculties are, the further he gets in his business profession. Because many times we find that the people come in the college age wandering back and forth, trying to find themselves and what they want to do, and because maybe parents had an influence. I'm a mechanical engineer, and my two sons, I never told them what to study, but study engineering, but both of them end up different field. One of them studied business, and the other one is a computer science. But just the fact they thought I was a mechanical engineer, I want to become a mechanical engineer. I think this is just I think Baha'u'llah's writings is marvelous. Having attained the stage of fulfillment and reached his maturity, man standeth beneath a wealth, and such wealth as he acquired through crafts or professions is commendable and praiseworthy in the estimation of men of wisdom, and especially in the eyes of servants who dedicate themselves to the education of the world and edification of its people. They direct the peoples of the world to the straight path and acquaint them with that which is conducive to human upliftments and exaltations. The straight path is the one which guided man to the dayspring of perception and the dawning place of the true understanding, and leadeth him to that which rebound to glory, honor, and greatness. So I want to talk to you a little about education. The Baha'is of Iran, one day became Baha'is and read the message of Baha'u'llah. And the emphasis on education, they educate their children. You read Hands of God, Mr. Frutan, that he says, when my mother and grandmother became Baha'i, they taught that we should not go to school. You see, you have to look at that civilization of that time of Iran. And his brother was 9 years old, and then at that time they decided, now it's time for them to go to school. Between 1880 and 1920, many Persian Baha'is immigrated to Ashgabat in Russia and Turkmenistan. About 4,000 of them. And was the first example of a Baha'i community according to the life of teachings of Baha'u'llah. This was encouraged by Baha'u'llah and later by the Master. And they welcome to practice their new religion in sort of freedom. They built a beautiful and imposing house of worship, which community members gathered to listen to dawn prayers every morning. 4 dependencies were built on the ground. And later on, other schools and libraries were opened. In Iran, Tarbiyat School in Tehran, which was officially opened in 1899, although it had already been in operation for 2 years. The Tarbiyat Girls' School opened in 1911. Soon after, similar schools were opened around the country in Iran. The school was 6 primaries and secondaries. Each one of these schools came into being as a response to Baha'u'llah's teaching on education, that the greatest means to the advancement of the world of being is education of the child, indispensable education for all human excellence. Abdul Baha wrote, it must become evident that it is the first school of Persia and its graduates are most successful. Otherwise, its not being is better than its being. In the girls' school was the first school in Iran that taught physical education. And the international cooperation between the American Baha'is and Persian Baha'is, the Master sent some American teachers for Tarbiyat School in Iran. What was the result of Tarbiyat School? By the way, I was 3rd grade in Tarbiyat School when it was closed down in 1934. And for 3-4 months we did not go to school. We were hoping it would open up again. Most of you know Hans called Mr. Faizi. I must tell you about him a little bit. He was 6 years old when he came with his mother and father from Qom to Tehran. They were not Baha'is. He went to Tarbiyat School, and he was marveled. Some of the outstanding Baha'is at that time were teaching Tarbiyat School, like Fazil Shirazi and Azizullah Mesbah. And his friends took him to the character school, we called them, which was Friday school, teaching the Baha'i writings. And in his memorial written that Mr. Faizi taught all his life was a Baha'i, because he was naturally from that stage, at the age of 6, he was associate Baha'is, and we all know the great accomplishments he has done. And from all the hands of the cause of God that I know of, he was really focused, the right word, for education of children and youth. He was really dedicated, and if you came to your house, he put the name of your children in his black book or pocket book, and was enshrined, pray for them. He was a very unusual person. When Mr. Faizi finishes the training in Beirut, he returned to Tehran to teach Tarbiyat School. He really wanted take part in educating children. But private schools closed at that time to disappointment. So he worked for Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. And then the call came that a small town near Isfahan called Najafabad required a teacher to teach 400 children from kindergarten to high school. And he gave his job and went there and for teaching the children. He really dedicated his life in the education of children. The Guardian wrote about him at that time. I am extremely pleased and grateful to him. And I pray from my depth of my heart for the success of that active, radiant youth. This is from Divine Arts of Living. Wealth is praiseworthy in the highest degree if it is acquired by an individual's own efforts and the grace of God in commerce, agriculture, art, and industry, and if it be expended for philanthropic purposes. Some of you have seen recent American Baha'i news. There are 1,482 Baha'i development projects presently around the world. The Baha'is are focusing in uplifting the standard of people in the underdeveloped countries. In 1985, the New Era Foundation for International Development was established. The purpose of this was raising the standards of communities in less developed areas is an essential requisite for world peace. That was the purpose of the foundation. This is a charter of foundations, tax-free, established in New York City, in the state of New York, and it's a corporation. It's not a committee, it's a corporation. And since it is a foundation, does not have shareholders, but has members. The members of the foundation are members of NSA. The member of NSA from time to time appoint board of directors, and the board of directors elect their officers. The purpose of the New Era Foundation is to contribute to the progress of communities worldwide by providing opportunities for communities to help themselves and develop their potentials. The basic difference between this Baha'i Foundation and other wonderful foundations around the world is that we believe in dignity of man. We help people to help themselves. We do not say it's not good to feed the poor, to help them. I think that's all wonderful. But the purpose of foundation is to go to the communities and work on the grassroots level to help them to work in the agricultural field, in the carpenter field, educate them. So these people themselves go to their own community and become leaders of this. And the example of these developed projects have been in practice for many years. And some individual Baha'is have done this. And in a short time our foundation have been in existence, we have been able to assist them financially and more or less work piggyback with them, giving some money on the affair they already done. And I must tell you, as a businessman, Working Powers Foundation is really miraculous. Because when you start a new business, you just get started and build your network. And when you work on Baha'i Foundation, you immediately have worldwide network. All the national institutions around the world that are doing this social economic development. And when we give some money for the Baha'is of Brazil for their activities, we get a letter from NSF Brazil thanking for these contributions. The network is all around the world to be able to carry forward this type of social economic. It's really amazing. It's amazing when you compare. In the 4 areas that we are concentrating is educational program, which compatible with local customs and socioeconomic realities, agricultural program concentrating on the introduction of techniques and areas that will provide farmers with earning power to expand their operations and acquire the basic necessities of life, industrial projects, and health and nutrition. The New Era Foundation will accomplish projects of lasting value. It is funded by voluntary contributions from individuals and organizations who recognize that the state of the world rests in part on the welfare of all its people. I have several examples of the things done, but I see my time is running out, so I would like to conclude with these writings from Divine Arts of Living. If a resourceful individual should initiate measures which would universally enrich the masses of the people, there could be no undertaking greater than this, and it will rank in the sight of God as the supreme achievement, for such a benefactor will supply the needs and ensures the comfort and well-being of a great multitude. Thank you very much.
We do have time for a couple of questions.
Yes.
Consider the most successful project that the New Era Foundation is working on.
I would say for the 3 years been in existence.
Could you repeat the question for the tape recording?
What has been the most successful venture we have done on the foundation? I must explain to you a little bit before I answer completely. Most foundations that start, like a Rockefeller Ford Foundation, they start with endowment. I must tell you that we start without endowment. So really our lack of resources have limited us so far to take a big project on our own. And what we have done, that was a part I did not continue finishing it, is we have given money to Puerto Rico, Brazil, Philippines, Nepal for cottage industry. We have given, few thousand here, a few thousand there, and most of the money that so far contributed are really from the member of the board of directors. And the purpose of foundation is really to raise money in outside of the Baha'i faith, because it's a charitable foundation. But most of our members are, I would say, experienced businessmen, and we try very hard to establish a track record before we take a very big project by ourselves and having sufficient fund to carry it to its end. And we have not started that. Now, we have one member in our foundation that does not think big. It thinks giant, super, I don't know how to explain her vision. It's her vision. And sometimes I'm under attack because I did something on Turks and Caicos Island through my business venture. I think we opened it, we start some business there, and we have a assembly in Provo. So this lady has great idea. He said, why don't we go to Samoa and have a black pearl industry, or go Hainan, have a sawmill. Those are all $10-20 million a project. And I think the day will come. And there are opportunities, if you permit me, I can tell you one of them, that this foundation can acquire a great deal amount of money to do this. But all requires a little bit seed money. I just give you one. There's thing called in the bankers called debt to equity. What it is, many large banks in this country have a huge loans, especially from Latin countries, that they're writing it off. Some of them writing it off, some selling at a great discount. And because they know that these countries can never pay them back, and you can go and buy these. You can go and buy these and maybe 10 cents or 12 cents for $1. And I'll tell you how we could use them. For instance, let's assume that we can go to the Bank America and buy $1 million of loan that the Bank of Brazil have for them, because they cannot pay back. Let's assume you buy it for 12 cents $1. So before you pay $120,000 for $1 million, you go to Bank of Brazil and go to the Brazilian government and you say to them, look, if I bring this $1 million note to me and come to Brazil, and there's a new university, there are many wonderful projects going on, would you give me $1 million equal in cruzeiros, it's your currency? I promise this money will not be exchanged to the hard currencies. I will come there and spend it for the purpose of social economic in that country. I will spend it for educating the people in Brazil, in the Amazon area, and they will accept that. So you have to have a back-to-back guarantee, So $120,000 is going to buy $1 million in Brazil. You can do. But after I say that, it's stretching $120,000. I tell the story about a businessman, that was negotiating to buy a company, and he came back and he said, how did you make out? He says, I have a good news and a bad news. He said, what's the good news? He says, he wanted $10 million for his company, He says, I negotiate down for $50,000, I can buy his company and pay the money later on his earning. Oh, he said, that's wonderful news. What's the bad news? He said, I don't have $50,000.
Time for one more question.
One more thing.
It would probably be edifying to all of us to hear stories in China that relate to the qualities, the values of the Chinese, the teacup, in relation for the shoe. That was a great teaching to me.
Yes.
Stories that you've experienced.
Well, I must tell you, the fun I had in China negotiating with them. Negotiating. I think in a legal background, I think there's a lot of fun to know how you negotiate. And you really, this comes from a Baha'i background. You really have to love people, understand their culture, understand what they're talking about. And there's no law, their law. Because the American way, sometimes it does not work dealing with China. And there's a negotiation called, in the business world, we call it John Wayne negotiations. and a John Wayne negotiation is you walk in the room and put your hands on two guns. And you put your hands on two guns, and the expression is, if you don't agree with me, I'll shoot you. But maybe it's exaggeration, but to some degree, you go on predetermined mind how far it can go no further. And the Chinese are